Welcome to Two Travel Dads Podcast. Here we share our favorite destinations, travel tips, stories from our adventures, and tips for saving money. Be sure to subscribe and check out our detailed show notes at twotraveldads.com/podcast-episodes.
And take two. Hey, it's Rob, and this is Two Travel Dads Podcast, and we are going to give this another shot. I've got my good friend Kate with me here. We've recorded a couple podcast episodes together, and we are tackling this one more time because we just started and we got through some wonderful dialogue, sharing some intimate moments of life when I realized that it was not recording us properly.
I mean, it happens. Technical difficulties.
It's my middle name. Good times. Anyways, so Kate, welcome back.
Thanks.
It's lovely to have you.
It's lovely to be here.
So we've recorded several episodes together. We've talked about joy and kind of the pursuit of that in our own lives, and we've talked about my skills and how I do travel planning, and we talked about her own travel anxiety. She really opened up and was vulnerable about, gosh, this is what it's like to when you don't travel every day. This is what runs through your head, and these are all that stuff.
Yeah, my crippling travel anxiety.
Yeah, but it was not crippling because you made it.
Yes, my travel anxiety is a nice vacation from my regular anxiety for sure.
Exactly, it's a different brand.
Yeah. So
So what is it? So just as a recap, just in case anybody hasn't listened to the one that we did about travel anxiety, what is it that makes you anxious when you think about travel and planning something huge?
I think it's the overwhelming hugeness for sure. I think that's a big part of it. And I think it's the fear of the unknown as well. I don't know what to expect. I don't know exactly where I'm going. I'm not sure what it'll be like once I get there. And I'm a person, my anxiety makes me very type A, and I need to be prepared for anything and everything that will and could happen. So that feels very heavy, So I carry all of that, and then it just kind of whirlwinds into a nice panic, a nice deep panic.
So thinking about all that, so the trip that you just did, one day you were like, hey, we're going to go to Europe, and you booked it. So you just did the UK and Scotland and then had a little time in Amsterdam.
Yep.
With that, thinking about like your anxiety and kind of the things that could have gone wrong, do you feel like anything that you had presupposed in your mind came to fruition as far as things not working out the way you wanted?
No. And I think that once I had planned, I shouldn't say no. I think all of the things that I was worried about that would happen happened before we left. So,
like what?
So our flights got rearranged, and we got notifications that our flights were at different times. Initially, our layover in Amsterdam was about 90 minutes. Then they were like, yeah, your layover in Amsterdam is going to be about 30 minutes. And so then we started to freak out because the more research I did on Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, the more I realized it's huge. And it is not easy to get from one gate to the next in 30 minutes. And that's if your plane is...
it has the most intimidating customs area.
It's bananas.
Even though it's really well organized.
And so, just FYI to everyone that ever flies in Schiphol, it's a lovely airport. It was actually, it was much nicer than I ever expected it to be. And it was really well organized. However, it's just large size-wise. And, if anybody who's ever tried to get to a connecting flight in a short amount of time, the image from the McAllisters running through the airport to catch their plane goes through everybody's head, right? So I think that those were the things I was most worried about. And then we ended up having to deal with them before we ever left. So really, just regular life stuff. And what ended up happening is my husband called the airline and said they had changed our layover again. This time it was not going to be 30 minutes. It was going to be 8 hours overnight. And at that point we were like, okay, well, now we have to pay for a hotel. I don't want to sleep in the, lobby of the airport or whatever.
Not my favorite way to travel.
So my husband ended up calling the airline and talking to them there and saying, hey, listen, can you just push our flight back a full day? We'll have 2 nights in Amsterdam and a day in Amsterdam. And then we got to actually visit Amsterdam. So ultimately making that choice got us another day in another country.
Yep.
It was fabulous. Love Amsterdam. It was cold, but it was gorgeous. And, it ended up working out. But a lot of those things, a lot of the things that I freak out about, by the time the trip rolled around, it wasn't an issue. Like packing, I was freaking out. Oh my gosh, are we going to fit everything? But by the time I get to the airport, everything's packed. It's done.
Yeah, and
I figured it out.
Well, one of the things that you were doing that impressed me or surprised me or disgusted me, I wasn't sure, was how far in advance you were packing and kind of doing test runs for packing and stuff. And do you think that made it so that you guys were successful?
Yes, and
because you're doing the UK in the winter.
Yeah, well, and here's the really interesting thing. We did the UK in the winter, and we only backpacked. I ordered large backpacks from Amazon that are like, carry-on size. And my boys are big enough to carry their own luggage, so that was really helpful. So everybody got their own backpack. And then my kids actually had stuff that they brought that they didn't wear. So we overpacked. We were good to go. And
That's
we
impressive,
brought layers.
You were gone for like 2 weeks.
14 days, yeah.
And you didn't wear everything?
But my kids did. I wore everything because I pack very intelligent. My kids, there were things that they packed that were like their nice outfits to go out to dinner or whatever that they never wore because my kids are like, ew, it's itchy and I don't want to.
I'm done packing stuff like that.
Yeah, so it ended up being fine, and we had laundry on the premises in both London and in Scotland, which was a huge, obvious help. So we did our washing and stuff, but it ended up being fine. Packing is definitely a point of anxiety as far as like planning goes for me. Like that is one of my biggest planning like feelings.
And kind of like pre-packing seemed to have been a bit of a therapy.
Yeah, and I always think I'm going to forget something that I really need, which inevitably you do forget something that you really need. But, I mean, unless you're going to, a third world country, usually you can get nail clippers. You can get, so it's not the end of the world if you forget your, third pair of socks or whatever. And I think I kind of resolved myself to that. I did go through the bags like several times before we left and repacked and, But I tried, I think that planning was really, really key. Anybody that struggles with travel anxiety, with anxiety as a whole, I guess, I think that just organization tends to help and make you feel like you have a little bit of control, because a lot of my anxiety in every case comes from lack of control.
Yeah. It's funny. So Kelly and I recorded a podcast episode about our road trip through Arizona, which you can listen to on the podcast station. And one of the things that we talked about was how I tend to plan everything really hardcore down to we need to leave by this time so that we can do this hike, and this hike is going to take this long. And one of the things she said is that if you are a nervous traveler, is key to really actually making sure that you feel safe. And that was the word that she used, was that it gives you a feeling of safety when you know that you will be here at this time.
I 100% agree with that. And look at how it threw you when your plans went awry when you were away and I was away. Oh my
God.
And we were 10 hours apart in our time zones. And I get a text from you and I'm like, good grief, what time is it there? And it was just, I completely understand your travel anxiety now. But I mean, I think that for people that really want to know what's going on and need that in there to feel safe, and I think that's a great word. I think that's really, really, a big part of that is just having everything set. And, honestly, and this is going to make everybody jealous, we didn't have one speck of rain. Not one. It did not rain. We were in Europe for 14 days in the rainy season.
I can't even believe that.
In the rainiest countries, and it did not rain. And so we were really lucky. We packed for rain. I had raincoats, but they doubled as winter jackets. We did have to buy my son a new winter jacket whilst we were in the UK.
That matched his shoes?
No, because he
Shameful.
decided to be a dramatic teenager and was tired of walking when we were in London. We were walking up to Abbey Road and dragged the side of his body along a wall that was being freshly painted by a nice older gentleman that my son then ruined his. And I just looked at him. I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? But I was like, just keep walking. Like we're going from Portobello Road to Abbey Road. It's a long walk. I'm like, just keep walking. So that we ended up when we got to Scotland, we bought him a new coat, but
good times.
Yeah. I think that there's always going to be things that happen that you can't plan for, but I think being as prepared as you can for whatever, I like the idea of expect the worst and hope for the best. I think I do a lot of my life that way.
I like to say low expectations, high hopes.
Yeah. I mean, same idea. So, I think that is, and I have a husband he claims he doesn't have travel anxiety. He has a different kind of travel anxiety. His is more about like, where are we going to park and how am I going to drive this car on the other side of the road and stuff like that. Which he did great. By day 2, he was fine. But his is stuff that you can't play. Like, he worries about things that he would never be able to figure out ahead of time. But then, of course, like all of this I did. So he was just like, all right, I'll
easy
just
breezy.
I'll just show up with my bag and whatever.
Well, so since we are talking about Brian, let's talk about what everybody enjoyed, and then we'll get to what you enjoyed. 'Cause
okay.
This was new experience for all of you. So, I talked to Brian before you guys went. What was your impression of how he enjoyed the trip? Was it literally just easy breezy, here I am? Was there something that stood out and he was like, yes, this is exactly why I wanted to do this trip with my family?
I think the thing for him, and I don't know if he would say this, but I would say this.
Oh, we can have him on too.
I mean, he definitely came home and was like, okay, when are we moving to Europe? Because I get on the interwebs and start looking for a house or whatever.
Going to Europe is really eye-opening because then you see what it's actually like in the United States.
Yeah.
And how
the other
we are
half
actually
lives.
not as remarkable as everybody here likes to think.
Yeah. I'm going to say this. Ladies, our public restroom situation is not up to par.
Oh, please do tell us all about the restrooms because you were so excited about that.
Okay, everyone that's listening, my literal takeaway from Europe was like the public restroom situation. Their public restrooms, if anyone is listening that has never been to Europe, our public restrooms, I walked out of every public restroom in Europe and looked at my husband and said, oh my gosh, we live in a third world country. I don't know what's happening in my life. We have, and for anybody that doesn't know, men, I don't know what your bathrooms look like. I don't go in a lot of male bathrooms, but the stalls in a regular, like a Target bathroom, a on the side of the road kind of place, rest stops, that kind of thing. Any public restroom, a female woman's bathroom is a stall, right, that has like 3 feet of clearance under the walls and door of said stall with a toilet at the back. And there is a 1 to 2 inch gap, and I think the ladies will agree. It's a decent sized gap in most places where you can actually, when you're sitting on the toilet, make eye contact with the person who is looking to see if anyone is in that stall. So privacy, not really a strong, I mean, we've all had the small child stick their head under the bathroom stall. We've all had that. Okay. This is like a common occurrence. In Europe, they have walls that go to the floor. They have a door, a closing physical door that goes to the floor. It's a room. It's a private room. You have to do your business. You got to do it too, as I say. It's a special private place. Well, it's clean. It's comfortable. They don't have the toilet seat that's like broken at the front. Why is it not complete? What's going on with the toilet seat in the U.S.? Why are we not doing that?
I wonder if that's why our nice lounges at airports in the U.S. have doors that go all the way to the floor.
They're
fantastic. Because there are also people from other countries who have standards.
Yeah, and would probably raise a ruckus if they walked in there and they were like, what is this garbage? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, I don't know. I just really needed to talk about the toilets for whatever reason. But I'm
glad it brought you joy and happiness and that you were so passionate about public restrooms.
Frustrating now when I go into a Target bathroom. But, I think the level of just cleanliness, weirdly, like it was just all of their public restrooms, even in the Isle of Skye where there are no people, it's just open mountain ranges. They have side of the road public restrooms that are nicer than most like state owned public restrooms at rest stops. And I was so shocked by that. So, yeah, if you go to Europe, definitely use a public restroom. That's my PSA for the day.
There's your takeaway. Good times. So you enjoyed the restrooms. That was your highlight.
That was the highlight of my trip. No, it was not. But it was definitely something. As far as my family and my husband goes, my husband really was, I think that his biggest takeaway was that all the things that we had heard that were negative were not the case.
Yeah.
And
It's the same with France.
oh, well, we'll talk about that on a different podcast. But anyway, no, I definitely think that, like, I think he was concerned about, like, crime. Because, you know, in the U.S., you hear, like, oh my gosh, everywhere else is, like, so much worse than here. But really,
It's
that's not the case.
No. And Jack the Ripper was so long ago.
Yeah. So, yeah, fun fact. Do you know what the top #1 country that for serial killers is?
Probably the U.S.
It is.
Yeah.
And do you know what the second one is?
U.S. minor outlying islands.
It's England.
Oh.
And England has had 100 and I think somebody's going to have to fact check me on this, but I think it's like around 119 serial killers. The United States has had over 3,000. So good job, everybody. I don't know what we're doing, but we need to like sit down and relax.
It's probably because people sit here listening to true crime podcasts.
Girls.
And they
Am I right?
develop the need to do this.
Girls, it's fine. We're okay.
Anyways.
I love true crime podcasts. Anyway.
Good times.
So, and I think there's a lot of ladies out there that would agree. Anyway, but the one thing that we really appreciated was that it was really safe. We felt really, really safe walking around. It gets dark in the UK and in Amsterdam at like 3:30 in the afternoon in the wintertime.
It's like the Pacific Northwest.
But we walked around at like the bus depot, which in the States is like the bus depot. I felt totally safe. It was totally fine. Everything was lovely.
I just remembered something I wanted to ask you about.
Okay, great.
So, you are a gluten-free person here in the U.S.
I am a gluten-free person.
Tell us about what you ate in the UK.
This is going to get me destroyed in the comments, but
That's
it's
okay.
fine. I can take it.
Let's
It's fine.
destroy you. I want to hear it because this is exciting.
I have a really bad, I'm going to say gluten intolerance, right? My doctor who didn't, I never had an official celiac test, but she's like, I think you have celiac. I digress. So I can't eat gluten. It makes me really, really sick. And when I say really, really sick, I mean like vomiting sick, right? And I get a headache and I get muscle aches and, you know, all that stuff, but vomiting for the most part. I ate gluten when I was there. I chanced it. I did it because I wasn't going to take a chance. And then I, decided we were staying with my friend, Nikki in London. And I was like, if I'm going to get sick, I'd rather get sick at her house and just, I want to see if it, because other people had said, oh, you can eat gluten, people have had no problem, whatever. So, and if you're like a hardcore celiac, I feel you, I'm sorry, and I don't chance it. But the bread over there, for whatever reason, did not affect me. And when I say did not affect me, I mean, I didn't feel bloated. My stomach was fine. I didn't feel nauseous. There was nothing. I felt fantastic the entire time. Did you try any beer? I did not. I don't really like beer.
That's okay. I was just curious.
I also feel like people are going to come for me because I just like beer. But
not everybody likes beer. It's
I don't really like beer.
More beer for the rest of us.
But also it's like cold. I feel like beer's a hot day drink. Anyway, but I ate bread. Once I had the initial bread and I was totally fine. I ate bread like it was my dying meal. Every restaurant we went into, I was like, what's your soup of the day? Does that come with the big crusty piece of bread that I could slather some butter on, which I also don't eat in the States? I ate everything that I don't eat here. It was the best vacation in the whole world just because of that.
It's kind of like just like a bigger vacation from like everyday reality.
Yes, it was amazing.
That's great.
I love bread and I miss it. So, but yeah, it was an eye-opening experience. I think for my kids, the best part for me watching my kids was them experiencing a different place, different culture, kind of, sort of. And also them eating things that they don't normally eat. I have picky eaters and they're 12 and 14. Parents, feel me, So they're like, oh, I don't want to have that. But they were trying stuff. They were
beans on toast.
They did not have. Nobody ate beans on toast.
I know beans on toast.
In fact, I've had several Londoners being like, no, that's not great. They ate fish and chips. They loved it. That's actually what we had for Thanksgiving dinner was fish and chips from the Chippy. And so we ate at pubs and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. They had such a good time. We went in Scotland. We went up to see the Cairngorm, I cannot say that word, reindeer. So in Cairngorm National Park, at the top of this mountain, they have a herd of reindeer that you can go up, and the herders will take you up and you learn about them, and then you can feed them, which is pretty amazing.
Well, that's cool. I didn't know that there was reindeer in Scotland.
Yeah, so
awesome.
you can hand feed them, and they kind of talk to you all about them and how they got there. And one guy was like, hey, there used to be reindeer here and there aren't anymore. So he brought reindeer to Scotland again.
Cool.
So it was really neat. It was a really awesome experience. I have a 12-year-old that loves animals, so he was happy as a clam.
Perfect. And then, so, gosh, I feel like we could do a really long podcast, but we're not going to go too crazy.
Part 2.
Well, so I'm kind of curious. So clearly Brian enjoyed it, wants to move there. You enjoyed all the glutinous things. Mm-hmm. Was there anything where the kids were like, oh, this is my jam, besides the reindeer? Did they really love London? Did they love going up into Scotland? What got the boys just like jamming out on the UK?
Okay, so for my 14-year-old, he loved London because there's shopping there, and he really does like shopping. He likes
He's a shopaholic.
He's very into like sneakers or trainers as they're called, and sports. And so we went and got him a pair of Nikes. That was one of his Christmas presents, early Christmas presents, in Covent Garden, and he was happy as a clam about that. And then we ended up getting my 12-year-old sneakers as well because, you can't buy one thing for this kid and not the other, in Soho one night. So they liked the shopping aspect. Both my kids are like me, so most of their enjoyment comes from food, which is, I'm really raising them right. So my oldest loves Chinese food, and we went to Chinatown for dinner one night. And
it's a cool Chinatown.
It's really cool
pretty.
Chinatown. And I will say that was like another big surprise. Everywhere we went, even if it was crowded, and London was very crowded. They had a march there the day that we were by Buckingham Palace, and then they, Carnaby Street, the lights, and it was Black Friday weekend. So there were people everywhere. It was absolutely mad. In fact, my friend Dan kept saying,
it was mad.
It's absolute chaos down here. And he's a Londoner, so he's like, I've never seen this before. But meanwhile, Dan's going to be like, that doesn't sound like me. But, the boys loved it, and we went to Chinatown and got a table for 8 right away, like in a throes of people. We just walked up, and I was like, hey, do you have a table for 8? And they're like, yeah, come on right upstairs. And even when we went to Borough Market, it was mobbed. I mean, when I say mobbed, wall-to-wall people walked just outside Borough Market, still wall-to-wall people walked into a pub. Do you guys have a table for 8? They're like, yeah, just go upstairs. I'm like, apparently the upstairs in all these places is really where it's at. So, but yeah,
so even things like that would be typically stressful for me.
Right.
So breezy.
It was peculiarly, it was weird. It got a little creepy.
I love that, and I'm glad.
And my 12-year-old loved Amsterdam the most, and that was based on stroopwafels.
Of course.
Because they had Nutella all over them.
He's obsessed with Nutella.
He's obsessed. So, yeah. So I think everybody really walked away loving it. Everybody walked away wanting to go back.
Has anybody said, hey, let's go back to Scotland, or let's get our next trip on the books? Where's everybody at with now that, because once you open that can of international travel, you realize that it is easy, even if it is costly. It's way more easy, and it's such a different world than what we live in.
Yeah. I think that is the kind of, having left that experience and while I was there, I had no anxiety. And even navigating the tube in London by ourselves and stuff, I had no anxiety. It was so easy when you go and you're like, wow, this is really not hard. This is actually easier than my regular everyday life. I think it was, it was definitely something that the boys now, we've decided that we're going to go to Italy in 2025.
I love Italy.
And the boys were like, can we stop in London for a couple of days and then fly to Italy? And I was like, oh, maybe.
EasyJet, cheap flights.
So I think,
scary.
I think that we flew EasyJet from London to Scotland, and it was fine. But yeah, I think it was, I think everybody really, I think the takeaway honestly was this is not as hard as I thought it was going to be.
And one of the things that kind of gets me is that it really is. I mean, the flight is the toughest part because it's long but people will go and they will spend an exorbitant amount on a Disney World vacation for 4 or 5 days. And for the cost of that, you can have 2 to 3 weeks in Europe and probably still not spend as much as you spend on a week-long or less Disney vacation.
And in Europe, a hamburger doesn't cost $10. So
Right?
there you go.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that kind of always gets me whenever I get to leave North America is just how surprising it is that more Americans are not venturing to places like the UK or France or Italy or Croatia, where it is easy, it is not crazy expensive, and they still opt for things that are just here, which there's lots of great stuff in the USA. I'm not bad-mouthing the US in that term, but
Yeah, there's plenty of places I still want to see.
yeah, but it's just, I'm shocked how few people choose to take the plunge and have an adventure like that.
Yeah, I think I know for me, I think a lot of people, it just seems unattainable. It seems like one of those things that you'll just dream about, but never get to do. And
Especially if you didn't grow up doing trips like that.
yes, for sure. And I think that there are people that live in the middle of this country that it's just not in their wheelhouse. It's just not something that they're necessarily thinking that they're, it's something you see on the Travel Channel and go, oh gosh, it would be amazing to go to Venice.
Mm-hmm.
But you never are going to go to Venice. But, why not?
I love Venice.
Well, it's got all those canals.
It's amazing. Well, that was good to kind of rehash that. And that's, I want to talk more about your very specific itinerary on a different day.
Okay.
Because I think you guys were doing some pretty cool, interesting things. Kind of outlanderish. I want to hear about your castle.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
But don't talk about it right now.
Save it for the
Save
next
it
one.
for a different day. But yeah, no, that was wonderful. And I'm glad to hear that the whole, just how anxious you were, because I was able to visibly see it. And now, as you talk about it, you're like, yeah, it was great.
I'm so breezy now.
It's so breezy. It was so blissful. Yeah, so that's wonderful. But so definitely tune back in, because we will dig into what does it take to do 2 weeks in the UK and go over that whole itinerary and kind of the planning for that. And then, check out the blog as well, because we are going to have all kinds of info, including my own itinerary for London, because I know how I like to do London. And I think it's going to be very different from what Kate has. So
I agree.
yeah. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and recommend us to your friends who want to go out and explore the world and hear our stories, because between me and Chris and Kate and Kelly and all of the different guests that we have on, we have a lot to share. So share us with your friends. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Two Travel Dads podcast is written and produced by Rob and Chris Taylor in St. Augustine, Florida. Check out past episodes and detailed show notes at twotraveldads.com/podcast-episodes. If you would like to be on Two Travel Dads podcast, please send us a note through our website or find out more at twotraveldads.com/work.